Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here this afternoon to listen to me present on our project. I'm Sarah Ehmer. I'm a natural resource specialist with Yakima County Water Resources in the Public Services Department. Also with me is Troy Havens. He's here. He'll be here at the end to help answer any questions if I'm not able to. Briefly, I do want to mention that our project is in partnership with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bureau of Reclamation, Washington Department of Ecology, Yakima Basin Integrated Project, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I also want to acknowledge Scott Klein from Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife for helping me out with some of the bull trout information for this project. So if anyone's not familiar with where this project is, South Fork Tieton River spills into Rimrock Reservoir. So on the left-hand side, you can see where Rimrock Reservoir is in relation to Yakima and Tieton on the right. Um, Rimrock Reservoir is part of the Yakima project that's run by Bureau of Reclamation. On this picture, you can see what the reservoir looks like at full pool. And the South Fork Tieton is off the bottom, which we'll see in the next picture. In this picture, I just wanted to show all of the tributaries that flow into the reservoir, and importantly, a North Fork Tieton on the left, our project area, the South Fork Tieton on the bottom, and how they come together and form the Tieton River. Where the arrow is pointing, that's also the Tieton Dam, and that's important to this project also because that's a fish passage barrier. So all the fish that are present in this area are landlocked at this time. Zooming in a little bit, you can see our project area circled in green. Again, this is that high pool. You can see how the water backwaters into that area, and you can see the current channel, that little thin channel that's there with the bridge over it. Looking a little bit closer, if you notice that that channel doesn't look very natural, you would be correct. This area that I've circled here, if you look very closely, you can see the remnants of where the historic channel used to be. In 1985, when the new road was constructed and they had to construct a new bridge, it was there's a slide area here, and it was determined not to be suitable for the bridge to be constructed there. So the solution at that time was to blast a new channel through some rock, which was a more stable platform for the bridge. And that's what they did. So that's what the current conditions are. The South Fork Tieton provides 13.5 miles of habitat for spawning and rearing and supports the largest bull trout population in the Yakima Basin. Bull trout are our target species for this project, and they are listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. However, though it be a large population, the population has been declining in recent years, which is a concern because we want to keep that population as robust as possible. And just for some context, I mentioned that Rimrock Reservoir is part of the Yakima project, and this shows the distribution of bull trout. Um, you can see that there are several populations of bull trout, if you can make it out, that are also on other Yakima project reservoirs. So that'll come to play a little bit in part of the presentation. So what's the issue with the current configuration? This picture shows what the conditions look like. We're standing in the channel looking towards the reservoir. The picture on the left is what that channel looks like under the bridge at high pool versus what that channel looks like at low pool on the right. And it's a little bit more dramatic if you look at it from the other side. So in this picture, you can see that during low pool, there is a waterfall that forms in at the opening of that channel. This photo is from October from 2016, showing that waterfall. And those conditions occur from mid-August through as late as May or June. This photo, we just took this photo earlier this month. This is just what it looks like from the top of that waterfall at the end of the channel. So what are the issues with the waterfall, the impacts of the waterfall? Well, clearly that's not conducive for fish passage, so it's an upstream fish passage barrier. Also, it's not great for fish that are trying to return to the reservoir, and there has been some observed mortality of fish at the bottom of the waterfall as well. And additionally, the current management strategy is to hold the reservoir to a higher level till at least August 10th in order to allow bull trout to enter their spawning grounds. But that reduces the flexibility within the water storage system. And if there was some more flexibility with that, then that would trickle down to the populations of bull trout that are living in those other reservoirs that we mentioned earlier. So again, bull trout are our target species. The migration window for bull trout to enter their spawning grounds is longer than the access to the river, and late migrating individuals are currently excluded from entering the river, and over time, that's hindering the population growth. Red counts have been observed to be down, and there's a reduction in genetic diversity. Also, again, mortality risk, and reduction of productivity of other species of fish and prey fish. So I mentioned that bull trout are our target species, but they're not the only species of fish that live in the reservoir, and they're not the only species of fish that will benefit from this project. Cutthroat and rainbow trout also spawn in the river, but they begin their migration in April. Um, Again, if they're not able to access the river until May or June, the early part of their spawning is cut off. And it's significant because rainbow trout are an analog for anadromous steelhead, and there's hopes to reintroduce steelhead in the future when passage is reestablished at the dam. Kokanee also are impacted by the waterfall. In fact, they are unable to enter the river at all because they don't spawn until late September, and that's well past the time when the waterfall is existing. And again, they're an analog for sockeye salmon, and same with rainbow trout and steelhead. I'm hopeful that sockeye could be reintroduced in the future and utilize this space. So what we proposed, what we looked at was what is the best channel. We can see here the existing channel in blue, the historic channel that we talked about in green, and our proposed channel alignment is the one in orange. To accommodate the bridge and avoid the slide area, we just moved it over a little bit to the west. So this picture is from the reservoir. In this photo, you can see, this is also taken in 2016. You can see the waterfall here. You can see, you can just make out the historic channel there in that corner on the left. And in the middle is, I should have labeled this. In the middle is where the channel will be constructed. So we'll look at that again. If, that's the historic channel that you can see up in the corner. I included this because this is what we hope the new channel to look like and be a lot better for fish passage. This is on the other side now facing the reservoir northeast. That center portion where the trees are, that's where we plan to excavate the new channel. And then now facing south, looking to where the new channel will connect to the existing channel. We have completed plans, so I've included those. This is the plans for where the new channel will be excavated, how the bridge will be, and the positioning of the berm that we will place to divert water into the new channel. That will be constructed in such a way that the existing channel will still be you can still utilize it during high water. It won't impact that at all, but we'll just divert water during low flows into the new channel. Our project is in the Bull Trout Action Plan, South Fork Tieton Action Number 4, which has two parts. Step one was to assess the fish passage, and that part is complete. We are on step two, which is design and implementation. The design phase is essentially completed as well, so we're just on the implementation part. It's associated with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service RUIP actions. Um, our project also complements ongoing planned activities, the rimrock foraging, migrating, and overwintering action number one, which is to provide connectivity at Tieton Dam. And Yakima Nation and partners plans for a hatchery facility and bull trout reintroduction efforts. So the benefits for fish that we hope to see from this project is year-round passage, both in and out of the river, which will restore access for late migrating bull trout, access for early migrating rainbow and cutthroat, and restore access for kokanee, and then reduce that mortality risk at the waterfall. Our other benefits include operational flexibility throughout Reclamation's water delivery system, which will benefit agriculture and fish. It has the potential to reduce the impacts of the current flip-flop operation, improve in-stream flows and water quality in the Tieton and Upper Yakima rivers. And our plan retains the current channel conditions to allow for continued use in the recreation areas. And then some long-range benefits, as I may have mentioned already, establishing access to the 13.5 miles of cold water habitat so that when anadromous fish are able to be reintroduced when passage is created at the dam, then there's habitat there for sockeye, steelhead, coho, spring chinook, and Pacific lamprey. And one last one, future bull trout recovery can reduce ESA liabilities for community members. So we are asking for $500,000, which is just 10% of our overall budget. The other funds for the remainder of the project have already been secured, so we are just asking for that $500,000 to help us construct our new channel. And that's it.
Thank you, Sarah. I want to highlight that last bullet point as well. This funding critical for not losing the rest.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Sarah, did you consider blasting under the existing bridge as a possibly cheaper alternative? I know you're way past that stuff, but I'm curious.
It was considered. Troy might be better able to answer the question on why that alternative was not selected, but I do know that based on the modeling, the channel that was selected was the most viable option.
Mm-hmm.
Others? Say again. Like,
Most viable on what reasons? Cost or environmental impact or timing?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So, this project's been going along and where we're at now. So we've had one leader in the community kind of took this project on. His name's Joel, and since retired. And I do not have the full background. I know that there was passage feasibility studies done, which we could provide, and maybe that would help bolster, to show that we've looked at alternatives and why this was selected. But this is kind of where they landed at. And so, as Sarah mentioned, we're just waiting on one last permit. It's nearly fully permitted, nearly fully funded, and kind of ready for implementation.
What's the planning for the bid timing, and how would that relate to our review timing?
Yeah, so we would go out to bid as soon as we can and obligate funds. If we did that, there would be a risk that we wouldn't have the full amount. However, in that scenario, we have these engineers' estimates, which are close, And the funding that we have matches that. So, there's also, how did the bids come in, things like that. So it would be a risk for us to go out as soon as possible, like we'd wish. And that would be, what was it, end of June, 1st of July timeframe?
So I'm just thinking, would you know more about whether the price comes in lower or higher before our final evaluations in late July and the first week of August?
I think that'd be a good timing, yeah.
I might be imagining this, but I feel like I did a site visit out there with Joel at one point, and I have a vague memory that one of the considerations was they didn't want to do anything geotechnically around the existing bridge because of the risk of having to then rebuild that one. They found it was maybe cheaper to build a new bridge than to do modifications on the existing.
My
Mhm.
memory is the main thing too is just the grades. At the waterfall, you've got to burn 40 foot of grade, which means if it's headed down, you'd be going way back up the South Fork. Whereas the reservoir bed, you just climb down the highway 10 feet and you're at the reservoir bed, and then you can get your grade out on the reservoir. So I suspect that you actually would have had a lot more excavation. And that's my memory, but it's been so long since the alternatives discussion.
No, I think you're right.
Mhm.
It's my idea too.
You know, some dynamite, a couple cases of beer in a weekend and you can.
Nobody wanted to do it that way.
They're in their bridge, come around north of the road.
You can't sell that one.
Mark noted the recreational use of the existing bridge, and it is heavy. And at one point, there were designs that would have filled in that area that would have certainly raised a lot of questions from recreationalists, whether that's good or bad. The current design doesn't change the recreational use of the bridge when the reservoir is up. The main issue is just gonna be, this is gonna be a really fun one to be the guy on traffic control on this project all the winter.
If recreation includes jumping off of it, there are signs that say not to do that on the bridge.
Next to the beer bottles.
Well, imagine that.
I got a question about the lake itself, and she said that it's, landlocked, nobody gets out. But how about when they flush that thing, when they dump it, do any fish escape out that way? Does it come out the bottom like quail does, or what,
A lot of fish get out, it's just a matter of whether they survive it or not.
so it is a drain out the bottom of the dam? Yeah, okay.
It's actually the only one that doesn't have a dead lake at the bottom. So you can actually, the drain is at the very bottom. You can drain the entire lake.
It was a meadow.
Okay, so that, anybody who's down there,
This was the lowest we've seen it in most people's memory. A few old folks might have seen it.
There's also a power plant at the bottom. At least some of that water goes.
This year, probably a lot of the fish were flushed out downstream because it was drawn so low.
They left the gate open a little bit too long.
well, so is that bad that they left it out too long, or, I mean, it seemed like some fish might have, if they like to say survive, might have got out of it.
They can go down and can't go up.
They can't go up though, there you
I
go.
don't know whether you're gonna live going down, but you can do this.
Yeah, but you may not, but you can't go back.
On the topic of it being a former meadow, Sarah, you mentioned reintroduction of sockeye, and I'll just nitpick a little bit. This would be an introduction of sockeye because there was no nursery lake there before, so we're not reintroducing anything that would have previously existed in the sockeye.
Yes, that is correct.
But it is more productive for kokanee than any of our other lakes, so. It's got a lot of potential as an intro.
So is there ever a plan, is there any way that fish would have a deal with that?
We're working on it right now.
Yes.
And what is it, I mean, like Lake Clellan, they have the trucking, but what would they do there?
So the plan for Green Rock as it stands right now is, so the Bureau's doing the planning. It would be an adult collection facility, just like at Cleellum.
Okay.
That would get fish up, and then we're vetting a few different options for getting them out, like hopefully a passive you know, kind of multi.
Would it be, something like they did up Lake Level?
May,
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah, similar, but probably not the helix.
Not the helix
Yeah.
part of it.
They got along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody on Zoom?
So is it still that it needs to be constructed this year for the whole funding package to hold together? You aren't considering deferring it past this fall?
Yeah,
So you'll have a quick turnaround if you're going out to bid in June, July.
mm-hmm,
You're gonna get bids back in June, you better get it out the door.
It'll basically be awarded and then you.
Everything contracted this morning, we can figure it out. Yeah. Some of them might not take them. It should.
All right. Thank you much, Sarah. Thank you, Troy.
Yep, thank you everyone for
thank you.
being here today.